I paid my parents' bills for 6 years. When I needed babysitting just once, they said not our job. The words echoed in my mind like a cruel refrain, each syllable sharp and cutting. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the text message that had just come through from my mom. Sorry, sweetie, but babysitting isn't really our job anymore. The screen blurred as tears welled up in my eyes, hot and angry. How could they say this to me? After everything I had done for them. It started 6 years ago, when life decided it was time to test how much one person could endure. My parents were drowning under medical bills after Dad's heart attack. He'd been working construction his whole life, never taking a day off unless forced to by injury or illness. Mom worked part-time at a diner, her hands calloused from scrubbing dishes and serving plates of food she couldn't afford to eat herself. Their savings had evaporated within months, leaving them with nothing but mounting debt and despair. At 24, fresh out of college with a degree in business administration, I landed an entry-level job at a marketing firm. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough to cover rent and groceries, if I lived frugally. And live frugally I did. Every penny I earned went toward keeping us afloat. Rent money became hospital payments. Groceries turned into prescriptions. Nights out with friends disappeared entirely because there simply wasn't room for anything beyond survival. Every month, I sent checks home. Sometimes they came directly from my paycheck, other times, I dipped into what little savings I managed to scrape together. Each envelope felt heavier than the last, not because of its contents, but because of the weight it carried, the weight of responsibility, sacrifice and love. Love that should have flowed both ways, right? My parents didn't ask for help outright. They tried to shield me from their struggles, brushing off my questions about finances with vague reassurances. But I saw the truth in the way Mom hesitated before answering the phone, worried another bill collector might be calling. I noticed the way Dad avoided eye contact during family dinners, guilt etched into every wrinkle on his face. So, I stepped in without being asked. Because that's what you do for family, isn't it? You take care of them when they can't take care of themselves. For 6 long years, I poured everything I had into ensuring they stayed afloat. Promotions came slowly, and while my salary increased incrementally, so did the demands on my wallet. Medical expenses piled up faster than anyone could keep track of. There were surgeries, medications, physical therapy sessions, all necessary, all expensive. By the time I hit 30, I was exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally. The constant worry gnawed at me, leaving me hollow inside. Yet, I kept going. For them. And then, something changed. Or rather, someone arrived who changed everything. His name was Liam, and he swept into my life like a storm I hadn't known I needed. We met at work, a whirlwind romance born out of late-night brainstorming sessions and coffee-fueled conversations. He made me laugh when laughter felt impossible. He reminded me what it meant to dream again, to hope for something more than just scraping by. Within a year, we were married, standing hand in hand in front of friends and family, promising forever to each other. When I found out I was pregnant, joy exploded inside me like fireworks on a summer night. Finally, something good. Something beautiful. Something worth all the sacrifices I'd made. I called my parents immediately, my voice trembling with excitement as I shared the news. They cried happy tears over the phone, congratulating me and promising to be there every step of the way. "You've given us so much," Mom said softly. "Now let us give back." Those words stayed with me throughout the pregnancy, a balm to soothe the anxiety bubbling beneath the surface. For once, maybe things would balance out. Maybe I wouldn't have to carry the burden alone anymore. Maybe. But then reality hit harder than I expected. Morning sickness morphed into all-day nausea. Work deadlines loomed large despite my growing belly. And Liam, bless him, tried his best to pick up the slack, but he was juggling his own career pressures. By the 3rd trimester, I was stretched thin, barely holding myself together. That's when I reached out to my parents. "I need your help," I admitted during one of our weekly calls. "Just once. Could you watch the baby for a few hours next week? I have a big presentation at work, and Liam has an important meeting too. We're swamped." Silence greeted me on the other end of the line. Then finally, Mom spoke. Her tone was gentle, almost apologetic, but firm nonetheless. "Sweetheart, we'd love to help, but babysitting, well, it's just not really our job anymore." Not their job. Not their job. The phrase ricocheted around my brain, bouncing off walls built brick by brick over 6 grueling years. 6 years of paying bills, making sacrifices, putting their needs ahead of mine. All those envelopes filled with checks, all those sleepless nights spent worrying if I'd sent enough to cover yet another emergency expense. Wasn't any of that proof that I considered caring for them my job? Why didn't it translate the other way? I swallowed hard, forcing myself to sound calm even though fury burned in my chest. Okay, I said quietly. I understand. But I didn't understand. Not really. Not fully. Not until later that evening, when I replayed the conversation in my head, dissecting every word, every pause. What exactly did "not our job" mean? Did it mean they resented having accepted my help all these years? Did it mean they saw parenthood as a finite role, one that ended when children grew up and moved out? Or worse, did it mean they viewed me as someone who owed them, someone whose contributions were expected, not appreciated? Sleep eluded me that night. Instead, memories flooded in, unbidden and relentless. Memories of childhood summers spent chasing fireflies in the backyard, Dad teaching me how to ride a bike, Mom baking cookies that filled the house with warmth. Memories of teenage arguments over curfews and grades, followed by tearful reconciliations where hugs lasted longer than apologies. Memories of holidays crowded around the dining table, laughter ringing out loud enough to drown out the world outside. These weren't distant recollections buried deep in some forgotten corner of my mind. These were vivid, living snapshots of a life shaped by love, or so I thought. Had I misinterpreted it all along? Was it obligation masquerading as affection? Duty dressed up as devotion? By morning, exhaustion weighed heavily on my shoulders, dragging me down like an anchor. Still, I dragged myself out of bed, determined to face the day. Determined to prove to whom I wasn't sure that I could handle whatever came next. Because that's what I always did. Handle things. Alone. Except now, there was Liam. Sweet, supportive Liam, who listened patiently as I recounted the conversation with my parents. Who held me close when sobs racked my body, tears soaking his shirt. Who promised over and over again that we'd figure it out together. Together sounded nice. Together sounded safe. Together sounded like maybe, just maybe, I wouldn't crumble under the weight of expectations no one else seemed willing to share. Days turned into weeks, and preparations for the baby consumed most of my waking hours. Nursery decorations went up, tiny clothes were washed and folded, lists upon lists were made. Through it all, the sting of my parents' rejection lingered, a dull ache that refused to fade completely. Part of me hoped they'd change their minds, reach out with offers of assistance or simple expressions of regret. But the days ticked by, and silence reigned supreme. Then, labor happened. Suddenly, unexpectedly, painfully. Hours stretched into eternity as contractions ripped through my body, each wave stronger than the last. Liam stayed by my side, whispering encouragement, wiping sweat from my brow. Nurses bustled in and out, checking vitals, adjusting monitors. And somewhere amidst the chaos, a tiny cry pierced the air, a sound so pure, so perfect, it took my breath away. She was here. Our daughter. A miracle wrapped in soft blankets, placed gently in my arms. Tears streamed down my face as I gazed at her, marveling at the perfection of her tiny features. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a button nose, and lips pursed in a miniature pout. She was ours. Ours to protect, to nurture, to love. In that moment, surrounded by the hum of hospital machinery and the quiet awe of new parenthood, forgiveness bloomed within me. Not because my parents deserved it, not yet, but because holding her made me realize something profound. This child, this precious being entrusted to us, would teach me lessons far greater than resentment or bitterness ever could. Lessons about unconditional love, about selflessness, about finding strength in vulnerability. As the nurse wheeled us back to our room, I glanced at Liam, catching his eye. "We're going to be okay," I murmured, surprising even myself with the conviction in my voice. Because despite everything, the years of sacrifice, the sting of rejection, the uncertainty looming ahead, I believed it. Believed in us. Believed in her. Yet, even as hope flickered to life, questions lingered. Would my parents ever see her? Hold her? Feel the same overwhelming rush of love that had washed over me the moment she entered the world? Or would pride and stubbornness keep them away, robbing them of the chance to experience the joy only grandchildren can bring? Only time would tell. The first few weeks at home with our daughter Amelia were a blur of sleepless nights and endless diaper changes. Liam and I stumbled through the chaos together, learning as we went, leaning on each other when exhaustion threatened to pull us under. It wasn't easy, nothing about parenthood ever is, but there was an undeniable magic in watching this tiny human grow and change before our eyes. Every gurgle, every coo, every fleeting smile felt like a gift, a reminder that life could still surprise you with its beauty even after all the hardship. But amidst the wonder, the ache of my parents' absence lingered. I told myself it didn't matter, that their refusal to help was just another burden I'd have to carry alone. Yet, deep down, it did matter. More than I cared to admit. Because while I had chosen to step into adulthood long before most people my age, becoming a parent made me realize how much I still needed them, not as financial support or babysitters, but as family. As the people who were supposed to cheer for me, celebrate my victories, and hold me up when I faltered. I sent pictures of Amelia almost daily during those early days. Close-ups of her sleeping face, snapshots of her swaddled in blankets, videos of her kicking her little legs with abandon. Each photo came with a caption, "Look how big she's getting," or "She smiled today, I think it was for real." At first, I convinced myself I was sharing these moments out of habit, a way to keep them updated on their granddaughter's life. But if I'm being honest, part of me hoped they'd see the photos and feel something, a pang of regret maybe, or a longing to be part of her world. Their responses were polite but distant. A simple "she's so cute," or "congratulations, sweetheart." Nothing more. No offers to visit, no questions about how I was coping, no acknowledgement of the gaping hole their absence left in our lives. It stung, though I tried not to let it show. After all, I had survived worse. Survived 6 years of carrying their burdens without complaint. Surely, I could survive this too. Still, there were moments when the weight of it all pressed down on me so heavily I thought I might break. Like the night Amelia wouldn't stop crying no matter what we did. We rocked her, sang to her, changed her diaper 3 times in a row, desperate to figure out what was wrong. She screamed until her face turned red, her tiny fists clenched in frustration. My own frustration bubbled over, hot and sharp, and I found myself snapping at Liam over something trivial, a misplaced pacifier of all things. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered once Amelia finally fell asleep, tears streaming down my cheeks. I can't." Liam wrapped his arms around me, pulling me close despite the tension between us. "Yes, you can," he said firmly, his voice steady even though I knew he was exhausted too. "We'll get through this. Together." His words should have comforted me, but instead, they only highlighted everything I lacked. Together sounded nice, but it wasn't enough. Not really. What I wanted, what I needed, was a village. Family. People who understood instinctively what it meant to drop everything for someone else because blood bound you together in ways nothing else could. And yet, here I was, building my own family from scratch, piecing it together with whatever scraps I could find. Friends became surrogate grandparents, stopping by with casseroles and advice. Neighbors offered to watch Amelia for an hour so I could take a shower or nap. Even co-workers pitched in, sending care packages filled with baby clothes and handwritten notes of encouragement. Their kindness overwhelmed me, filling some of the cracks left behind by my parents' silence. But it wasn't the same. Couldn't be the same. One afternoon, about a month after Amelia was born, I received a call from Mom. Her voice was hesitant, almost shy, which immediately set off alarm bells in my head. "Hi, sweetheart," she began, drawing out the words as if testing the waters. "How are you holding up?" The question caught me off guard. Not because it was unexpected. She asked similar questions every time we spoke, but because of the tone. There was genuine concern in her voice, a softness I hadn't heard in months. For a brief moment, I considered letting my guard down, telling her exactly how hard things had been. How lonely I felt. How much I missed them. Instead, I forced a laugh. "Oh, you know. Same old, same old. Diapers, feedings, trying to remember what sleep feels like." She chuckled nervously, then hesitated. "Listen, your dad and we've been talking. About Amelia." My heart skipped a beat. Talking about her? That was new. Usually, they avoided mentioning her unless prompted directly. "Okay," I said slowly, unsure where this was going. Well, Mom continued, her voice growing quieter, we were wondering if maybe we could come visit soon. Just for a day or two. If that's okay with you. I froze, the phone pressed tightly against my ear. Visit? They wanted to visit? The request felt surreal, like hearing raindrops fall in the middle of a drought. Part of me wanted to say yes immediately, to throw open the door and welcome them back into my life with open arms. Another part, the part that remembered their cold dismissal when I needed them most, hesitated. Could I trust them? Did I even want to? Let me check with Liam, I said finally, buying myself time to think. We'll have to figure out logistics, but, sure. Maybe. Relief flooded her voice. Thank you, honey. You don't know how much this means to us. Her gratitude caught me off guard, stirring emotions I didn't know how to process. Gratitude? From her? After everything? Before I could respond, she added quickly, we'll talk details later, okay? Love you. Love you too, I murmured automatically, though the words felt hollow. As soon as the call ended, I sank onto the couch, staring blankly at the wall. Why now? Why suddenly decide to reach out after weeks of silence? Was it guilt? Curiosity? Or something else entirely? Over the next few days, I wrestled with conflicting feelings. On one hand, I wanted Amelia to know her grandparents, to experience the kind of unconditional love only family could provide. On the other hand, I couldn't shake the memory of their rejection, the way they dismissed me so easily when I needed them. Letting them back into our lives felt like opening a wound that had barely begun to heal. Liam listened patiently as I vented, offering perspective without judgment. Maybe they're scared, he suggested gently. Scared of messing up again. Scared of losing you completely. His words struck a chord, forcing me to confront the possibility that my parents weren't villains in this story. Just flawed, imperfect humans trying, and often failing, to navigate relationships as complicated as mine. Maybe they truly regretted saying, not our job. Maybe they missed me as much as I missed them. When the day of their visit arrived, nerves twisted my stomach into knots. I cleaned the house obsessively, rearranged furniture, and rehearsed introductions in my head like I was preparing for a performance. Amelia slept peacefully in her bassinet, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around her. The doorbell rang just after noon, and I opened it to find my parents standing on the porch, looking older and smaller than I remembered. Dad held a bouquet of flowers, Mom clutched a brightly wrapped gift. Their smiles were tentative, uncertain, as if they weren't sure whether they'd be welcomed inside. Hi, I said softly, stepping aside to let them in. Come on in. They moved cautiously, taking in the sight of the living room decorated with baby toys and framed photos. Mom's gaze landed on Amelia almost immediately, her expression softening as she approached the bassinet. Oh, she's beautiful, she breathed, reaching out to touch Amelia's cheek. Just perfect. For the first time in months, I saw the mother I used to know, the one who kissed my scrapes and cheered at my soccer games. The one who loved me fiercely, unconditionally. Tears pricked my eyes, and I blinked them away quickly, unwilling to let her see how much her presence meant to me. Dad cleared his throat, breaking the spell. So, how's everything going? He asked awkwardly, shoving his hands into his pockets. You holding up all right? I nodded, forcing a smile. Yeah, we're managing. He glanced around the room, his eyes lingering on the stack of laundry waiting to be folded and the pile of dishes in the sink. Looks like you've got your hands full. It's not easy, I admitted, my voice trembling slightly. But we're figuring it out. Mom turned away from the bassinet, her eyes searching mine. We're sorry, you know, she said quietly. For everything. For not being there when you needed us. For making you feel like you had to handle everything on your own. Her apology hung in the air, heavy and raw. I wanted to accept it, to forgive them and move forward. But forgiveness wasn't that simple. Not after years of sacrifice, not after the pain of feeling abandoned when I needed them most. I paid your bills for 6 years, I blurted out, surprising even myself. 6 years of putting you first, of giving up everything I had to make sure you were okay. And when I needed you, even just once, you said not our job. Do you have any idea how much that hurt? Silence fell over the room, thick and suffocating. Dad looked down at his shoes, shame etched into every line on his face. Mom reached for my hand, her grip trembling. "We didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered. "We were wrong. So wrong. And we'll spend the rest of our lives trying to make it right if you'll let us." Her sincerity broke something inside me, releasing a flood of emotions I'd kept locked away for far too long. Anger, sadness, longing, love. All of it poured out in waves, leaving me raw and exposed. For the first time, I allowed myself to truly feel the weight of everything I'd carried for so many years, and the possibility that healing might still be within reach. As the afternoon stretched into evening, the tension in the room slowly eased. My parents stayed longer than planned, helping fold laundry, washing dishes, and marveling over Amelia's every movement. They laughed at her antics, snapped endless photos, and marveled at how much she resembled both Liam and me. By the time they left, promising to return soon, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me, a fragile, delicate thing, but hope nonetheless. Yet, even as I watched their car disappear down the driveway, doubts lingered. Could we rebuild what had been broken? Could trust be restored after so much damage? Only time would tell. And until then, I vowed to protect my heart, and Amelia's, as fiercely as I always had. In the weeks that followed their visit, my parents began to make more of an effort. They called regularly, not just to ask about Amelia, but to check in on me and Liam too. Small gestures started to appear, a gift card for takeout delivered via mail, a care package filled with essentials like diapers and wipes, even a heartfelt note tucked into one of Amelia's onesies. Each act felt like a step toward reconciliation, a quiet acknowledgement of the bridges they'd burned and their desire to rebuild them. At first, I remained guarded, unsure if this newfound attentiveness would last. But as the months passed, their consistency chipped away at my defenses. Slowly, tentatively, I began to let them back in, not all at once but piece by piece. It wasn't easy, trust is fragile, and mine had been shattered before. Yet, there was something undeniably healing about seeing my mom cradle Amelia in her arms or hearing my dad proudly recount stories of when your mom was a baby during family dinners. For the first time in years, it felt like we were becoming a family again, not perfect, not without scars, but whole in ways I hadn't dared to hope for. One Saturday afternoon, several months after their initial visit, my parents came over to help celebrate Amelia's first birthday. The house buzzed with energy as friends and neighbors gathered, balloons bobbing against the ceiling and colorful streamers draped across every available surface. Amelia sat in the center of it all, wide-eyed and giggling as she clapped her hands to the music playing softly in the background. My mom stood beside me, watching Amelia smash her tiny fists into a cake decorated with pink frosting roses. "She's amazing," Mom said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "You've done such a good job with her."